Hello and welcome back to Try Your Hand. Today we will be making some tie-dye pieces of cloth. This is a two-part series, so when we are done with our tie-dye cloth, next month we will be sewing our piece of cloth into a little pouch. Without further ado, why don't we get into the supplies? Alright, for the supplies, you do need 2 pieces of cloth. In the kit that you picked up, you should already have the 2 pieces of cloth in there. We also have a few rubber bands in the bag, as well as little bottles of ink. They should all be measured out for you already, and they have the names of the colors on the bottles as well. You also need some gloves, which again should also be in your kit. The only thing that you really need from home is a kind of cooling rack or something with holes in it that kind of keep your piece of cloth from laying flat in its own watery dye juice. At the time that I was filming this, I did not have a cooling rack or anything like that, so I used this blue basket with holes in it because it was able to let the water drain from my pieces of cloth. The first thing that we need to do when we tie-dye is to wash whatever it is that we're tie-dyeing. In this case, with our little piece of fabric here, we have already washed it for you, so you don't have to worry about that quite yet. But if you do want to go dye something else, I mean, we did give you enough dye to dye whatever you want, essentially. You just make sure that you wash it first. The next thing that we have to do is to dampen our fabric. We just run it under water, squeeze out the water, and then after that we can get ready to start doing the actual process of tie-dyeing, so the scrunching it and all that sort of stuff. So I am going to show you how to do 2 different kinds of tie-dye. We're going to be doing the spiral kind, and we're also going to be doing a scrunched kind. Both of these are kind of easy, and I'll show you how to do those. So we've got our piece of cloth. The first thing that I'm going to show you how to do is to make the spiral patterned tie-dye. We do that by pinching the very middle of our fabric and turning it. So we will be taking our cloth and continuing to turn it tightly like this, and we will help it along as we get, towards the edges of the cloth here. It would probably be easier if this cloth was square, but it is rectangular, so it is a little bit more difficult here to kind of twist that into a nice spiral pattern here. Okay. An extra tip that I didn't mention at the time, mostly because I did not in fact know, is that, the tighter that you tighten your piece of fabric, the less the dye is able to go through the cloth. So if you have it a little bit looser, it's not a bad thing that you do. It just means that, it'll be more saturated in color. So depending on how you want your tie-dye to turn out, tighten it really tight or, leave it a little looser, that's okay. This is also something that you should know for the rubber band portion of this project. So it does get pretty small. This would probably be a little bit easier and a little bit nicer if your piece of cloth was bigger, or if you had like a t-shirt or something. But we're just showing you here how to do this, and also we're making a little pouch layer. So that is why this is kind of small. But that's okay. You will take your rubber bands here. We will now rubber band our little spiral guy. So I just kind of take the rubber bands and just kind of put them around like this. You can move them around if you want. You don't really need that many on this because the piece of cloth is small. It doesn't need much to keep it together. So now we have our little spiraled piece of cloth. I'm going to put this to the side, and now I'm going to show you how to do the scrunch method. So with the scrunch method, you start out the same. You lay out your piece of cloth, and then we will start scrunching our cloth. So we take our hands on the cloth and we just kind of keep it together like that. And then we just continue doing that until we kind of get something that sort of looks like this. Once that happens, then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same as we did with the other one and rubber band them together. So I'm just going to rubber band this one more lightly, just to kind of keep it together. And so that is now our scrunched. So that is our scrunched piece of cloth. Okay, so now we're going to start preparing the dyes. With this dye, you don't just put like regular water into the little squirt bottle. You have to heat up your water. It has to be hot. You don't want it super, super hot. You just want it to be not lukewarm, essentially. What I did in my thing was to use the Keurig. It was a really quick way to heat up my water. It was perfectly fine doing it that way. If you don't have a Keurig, you can just use the microwave. I put it in for like a minute or so, and that seemed to me like it was hot enough to use with the dye. Once you're done heating up your water, you just fill it up to the 60 milliliters, I believe it says on there, line on your little squirt bottles, and then you just mix that up. Okay, now depending on how much we give you, you put in your hot water in these little squirt bottles, and then you can put in your dye. Because my little bottles are too big for the amount of water that I'm using, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the dye in each cup and then stir it with one of these. It might be, and then I'm going to pour them into the cups here, these little squirt bottles, and then from there I'm going to shake them up so that they are good. At this point, we hadn't figured out how much to give everybody, so I just used the directions on the bottle, and that was a lot of water, so I was stirring in different cups. You won't have to do that. You just fill it up to that 60 line, whatever, if it's milliliter or whatever, and then shake. That's all you have to do. You really do want to make sure that your countertop is protected, because you don't want to dye anything yellow that's not supposed to be yellow, for example. So I'm just going to put some of this paper towel out just to kind of protect the counter from the dye. All right, so now we have to dye our two pieces of cloth. This is now the point where you would want to cover whatever surface that you are doing this on with something absorbent or something that does not absorb or go through and touch your counter. I have this like plastic like table cover type thing here covered. I also have paper towels on standby in case there are any spills that I need to cover up. I'm gonna actually put some of these paper towels under my little basket here. But now you would take your cookie, cooling rack, or any your object that stands up like this off of the ground or off of the counter and has holes, and you would put it on top of your area here that you set up, and then we will start to dye. Okay, so now we will start to dye. So we have our piece of cloth on top of our basket, and then we have our 3 dyes. I'm going to use the blue first, and then I'm going to cover. You can see here, I'm going to try and do this area and this area. It's all right if you go a little bit over the lines and what you would like. That should be fine. So let's get started on that. Okay, then I'm going to use the red and then the yellow here. Okay, so now that you have got your desired color palette here, you can turn it around and then sort of do the same thing essentially. So just putting in some of the blue here, bit of the red, And then some of that yellow. Okay. No, that turned out, all right, I think. Not the greatest, in my opinion. I'm going to use like blue and red for this, I think. Maybe I'll use some yellow. I don't know. I'll see how I feel. And this one you just kind of want to kind of put it around everywhere, a little bit everywhere. You do want to leave some white areas. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with some red. Or with this coral color. It's actually coral, not so much red particularly. Okay, actually I do feel like a little bit of yellow, just in certain areas. Okay, so once I think I have it at the way that the way that I want, I'm going to turn this over. Okay, again, we go in with our blue first. Okay, let's go in with some red. I know some people were using like only one color with this scrunch method, and that looked really cool, but maybe I'm getting a little bit too carried away with color, but I like color. Okay, so this one is done as well. Okay, so the next thing that we do is that we're supposed to leave this on the cooling rack for 30 minutes. So that is what we're going to do now. We're going to leave this here for 30 minutes. Okay, so it's now been 30 minutes. What we have to do now is to rinse off our tie-dye things. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So in order to do this, what we want to do is you want to rinse it with cold water. So what I'm going to do is I have the cold tap here, and then I'm going to rinse it in my little bucket. So now what we want to do is we want to take our things, our little bundles, and wrap them in saran wrap, and then we're going to put them in the microwave for 2 minutes. Here, so I'm going to wrap this in saran wrap. So then we're going to take these and put them in the microwave. So now we are putting our little things in the microwave for 2 minutes. Okay. Okay, so now the microwave has stopped microwaving. And then we have our 2 little things in there. So we're supposed to allow them to cool off before we unwrap them. So I'm going to go and put these in my little basket of supplies. They are hot, so be careful. So I put them in my little basket, and then I will wait, and we shall see what they look like. All right, let's see what our little pieces of tie-dye cloth look like. So I'm going to take these rubber bands off. So this was a scrunched one. So that's the scrunched. I did put like all the colors in there, but I know that if you just put one color or maybe just 2 colors, if you have a whole bunch of white spots, it does make it look really, really cool, not just, you know, different colors. Though it does have this nice little wave type color in there. I kind of like that. All right, so let's look at our little spiral one. Whoa, this one turned out kind of cool looking. Okay, because I had mine so tightly wrapped, there is a lot of white spots. Obviously, you can see that. So you can't, yeah, there's only like a little bit of, you know, of the dye in the corners and in here, but you can clearly see that it is a spiral in there. I kind of like this one. I think this one looks really cool. That looks kind of awesome. But you know, again, it depends on how you want yours. You know, if you want it super colorful, if you kind of like it with a little bit more contrast in your colors. I do kind of wish the darkers themselves were deeper in these ones than in this one, but I think the design on this one looks much cooler. All right, so then the next step for you is for you to then wash this sheet again. You do that because of the dye, you know, they do ask you to do one more round in the washing machine with like an old towel or something like that, so that you can get like that dye that hasn't adhered to your fabric, you know, wash away. You want to wash that away so that when you do, let's say, take your piece of cloth here, or you know, your little pouch, which we're going to make next week, and you need to wash it for whatever reason, you don't want your other clothes to, you know, be dyed as well. All right, so we are now finished with this project. It turned out pretty cool. I hope you guys had a lot of fun with this tie-dye project. I know that I did. I've never really done tie-dye before, and so I thought it was a really cool thing to try it. Don't forget that this is actually a 2-part series, and that next month we will be making a pouch with our little pieces of cloth. Also, if you have anything else that you want to tie-dye, go ahead and use those dyes that we gave you. We gave you a ton. Anyways, we hope to see you in the next Try Your Hand. Bye.